All right, so for C, it's a little bit different. We still have to do our N, we still have to do our X, we still have to do our P, and we still have to do our Q. However, you have to actually do something a little bit differently than you did for B. Our N is still 20, it's still the total amount. Here it says at most 5 are not employed. So at most means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's what we're going to be looking for our X. Now, the difference here is it says are not employed outside the home. This one says 60% are employed outside the home. So that means the probability of this event happening is actually the 1 minus 0.6 or 0.4, because we're not looking at whether the women are employed, it's whether they're not. And then the Q in this case would be the 0.6, which would be if they're not employed outside the home, then that means they are employed outside the home. All right, and the same thing that we did for last one, I'm not going to go ahead and plug all these in the calculator, but it'll be 20 NCR, and then our first one 0 times 0.4 to the 0 power times 0.6 to the to the 20 power, because there's 20, and then we will go 20 NCR 1 times 0.4 to the 1 times 0.6 to the 19. Then it could be 20 NCR 1 times 0.42 times 0.6 to the 18. 20, this should have been 2, NCR 3 times 0.4 to the 3 times 0.6 to the 17. 20 NCR 4 times 0.4 to the 4 times 0.6 to the 16. And 20 NCR 5 times 0.4 to the 5th times 0.6 to the 5th. Now, the good thing about this one is if you did B, you actually didn't need to do C again, because you already would have done all these, because we already did that at most, or at least 10 are employed. So that means we already should have calculated these had you done B. Now, since I didn't do B or it's not on the screen, I had to redo it. And then we would multiply these out and then add all them together. And this will give us a final answer of 0.125. Whoops. So 0.125 or 12.5%, or if you wrote 13% or 0.13, I would accept that as well. All right, this is the last problem I'm going through. It says driver's exam. If 80% of applicants are able to pass a driver's proficiency road test, find the mean, variance, and standard deviation of the number of people who pass the test in a sample of 300 applicants. So this is different than the expected value one, because once again, it gives us a total number, a finite number, 300 applicants. When it doesn't give us a finite number, then we do have to create the table and multiply our outcome and our probability. If they give you a finite number and you're finding the mean, our mean is equal to the total number times the odds or the probability of that happening. Our variance is equal to our total number times the odds of that event happening times the odds of the event not happening. And then our standard deviation is just the square root of our variance. So if we're finding our mean, this is then equal to 300 times 0.8, because we have 300 applicants and 80% of them passed the road test. So 300 times 0.8, that means on average, if we were to take 300 samples, so 300 people, there's obviously more than 300 people in any country that's going for a road test. We're not taking all of our population. But if we kept doing separate 300 samples, our average should be 240. That is what we should expect. And that's how many of those 300 should have passed a road test. Our variance would be the 300 times 0.8, which we already know is 240. And then we would have to times the failure. So that means 20% of people fail. So then we would have to times 240 times 0.2. So that means our variance is 48 people. And then to find our standard deviation, it is the square root of our N times our P times our Q, which we know is equal to 48. So the square root of 48 is equal to 6.9. So roughly 7. So we would have a mean of 240 and a standard deviation of 6.9. And remember, the standard deviation tells us how spread out our data is, how far away what's the average each number is away from our mean. Right? That is it for this review, and that's it for this video as well.